Hey YouTube, how are you guys doing? Man, it has been a minute. I have finally come out of winter dormancy. But today's video, what we're talking about is seed starting. How do you start your seeds? What to use to start your seed trays. It's that time of the year, guys, where we are beginning to start the seed growing process indoors here in West Texas and El Paso. Okay, some of you guys may have already started this, you know, if you're further up north or in the transition zone. Really, it just depends on what you guys are growing. So we have a lot of seeds that we start indoors. You know, last year we had about 4 different trays, so that totals almost, you know, each tray is about 24, I forget, 24, 36, depends on your cell size too, on what you guys, the cells that you guys are using. But let's talk about what we use to go ahead and make our own seed starting mix. That's really what we're talking about today. I'm going to show you the process of what we use and how we go ahead and build each one of these trays, and let's dive right into it. So peat moss is primarily the sub base, or it's a non-soil, I don't know what you want to call it, additive or particular that you're going to use to actually fill up each one of your seed cells. And then you're going to add, what I like to add is simply a combination of vermiculite. Okay, you can use perlite. That is another option in combination with the actual peat moss. You can add your vermiculite, your perlite, but for today's simple purposes and to keep it as most affordable as possible, the easiest that I have found and that has been most successful for my own particular needs and garden usage is simply using the peat moss and the vermiculite. I use a 3-to-1 ratio. Okay, so I'm going to use 3 parts of the peat moss and 1 part of the vermiculite. And you simply measure each one of those out. I use my wheelbarrow, so I make a huge batch of it, in other words, and I mix all that together, and then I load up each one of my seed cells. Okay, let's dive right into that. And again, this is just a really basic mixture that I like to use. Okay, and you guys can add whatever you want to. It really depends on your own personal preferences and what kind of successes that you guys have had with your own, inside your own gardens. Okay, I went ahead and already scooped out 3 little, what is this, a 2.5 quart of a flower size empty container. I scooped 3 of these in here already. And I know I'm going to need a lot more because I fill up my trays. I fill up all my trays because, again, we do a lot of seeds indoors. And that's all going to, the amount you make or pre-make is going to dictate on what you guys are growing. So if you've been following the channel, we have 6 raised beds over here. I'm sorry. Yeah, 6 raised garden beds over here. They're all 24 square feet except for one that I've got that's 48 square feet. And then as you guys can see, I've got my flower beds over here. I've got one that's 40 square feet. I got another that's 50. And then the back set over here, I've got a 60 square foot garden bed as well, raised garden bed. So we do a lot of plants, vegetables. And this year, in addition to the vegetable seed starting trays we're gonna do inside, I'm also gonna be doing some flower seedlings indoors that we start. Raise this up here so you guys can see my face. So 3 of those, 1 of these. Bring it in so you can see the actual ratio and how it looks there. Shadow with that sunlight, but give it a good mix. And the end result Looks much like that. All right, so I'm gonna keep working on this process here, but just to talk to you guys a little bit more about the products that you guys can use outside of what I have here. Whew, that's blurry. Outside of this right here, out of next to or in addition to your peat moss and your vermiculite, what you guys can add is some perlite. I did mention that. So you got to understand the differences, okay? You want a non-soil based foundation, which is your peat moss, and then your vermiculite. The reason why we want to use vermiculite, this is what's going to give you your nutrient holding capacity inside of your seed starting. What's up, Tango? Say what's up, dog. He's so much bigger. This is what's going to give you your nutrient retention holding properties inside of your seed trays. You don't need that dog, something else. You don't need to add a lot of fertility to your seed starting trays, okay? If you want to add a little bit of NPK, that's fine. Tango, you're vibrating the camera, knock it off. If you want to add a little bit of nutrients to your seed trays, that's fine. You don't have to add a lot. Some will add some worm castings. That would be my recommendation. If you're gonna add any fertilizer to your seed starting trays, add a little bit of worm castings, okay? When I say a little bit to a mixture, a ratio like that, I would go with 1 cup of worm castings and that's it. What you don't wanna do is over fertilize your seed starting trays and burn the seeds, okay? Don't go adding a bunch of Scott's weed and feed or Scott's fertilizer, nothing like that. Miracle Grow, don't do any of that. You have to remember the seeds have everything they need to go ahead and get germinated and start rooting. Year after year, I don't add any fertilizer. I don't add worm castings. I just want to focus on the real basic process of starting these trays. So I just simply use the peat moss and the vermiculite. So next to that, you can add your perlite. You can add worm castings. You can add a little bit of like a 468 or a 040, anything in that phosphorus or potassium range. I wouldn't go heavy on the nitrogen, but you don't have to. You can if you want, but you don't have to. I don't recommend it. Just keep it really basic. Another additive that you can add to your soil mixture is some rock dust. Rock dust is another good option. That rock minerals, a lot of things that you don't normally find in your soil system would be the rock dust, okay? That could be something else you add. Normally the rock dust, I just add to the garden beds throughout the season or at the beginning of the season if we're amending soil, which I really don't practice. I practice no-till gardening, but I'll layer it and then I'll water it in. But for the seed sets, this is all I want you guys to do. Just focus on 2 basic things: your peat moss, your vermiculite. Get a good mixture in. Let me backtrack to that perlite real quick, because I did mention the holding properties of each one of these. Your peat moss is basically your water retention. Your vermiculite is going to be your nutrient retention, okay? If you decide to fertilize your seedlings, as they're growing before transplanting, that would be a good reality of the vermiculite. The perlite is going to be that aeration property, okay, to give it a nice fluffiness, if you will. And keep those seed sets, aerated throughout the growing process. Outside of that, let me get these things going. I don't want to make this video too long because we have a ton of information coming out the pipeline, including what you guys see back here: world's worst Bermuda lawn. I'll talk more about that in another video. Y'all stay tuned. And if you have questions, feel free to leave a comment below. But if you're in zone 8 like I am, now is the time. We're 8 weeks out, that 8 to 10 week mark out before our last frost date, which is typically the first 2 weeks of April in El Paso in West Texas, where we need to start growing our seeds indoors. We got the grow lights already hung up, which we use every year. I'm not going to be using heat mats this year, and now's the time to start doing it. This is where things get exciting, guys. Y'all follow along, have comments. Don't forget to subscribe, leave the comments below, and I'll get back to them as soon as I can. Have a good one. All right, guys, so as you guys saw, all I did was fill up each one of these seed cells, and we filled it to the brim, okay? Also, what you'll notice, and I just want to bring this to point, I save my seed cells every year, okay? Make sure you take out any large wood chips if you got them in there, but I save these, and it is an option. You don't have to do that. Just kind of a tip, though, is if you do save them, expect this process to be not as difficult, but it's a lot harder, or not harder, but it's easier if you want, if it's in your guys' budget, to buy new seed cells. And the reason why I say that is because when you go to fill these up, you're going to get soil. Like if you saw the method I was using, you can get soil inside of the actual tray, which you'll have to remove each cell and dump that out. You don't want a bunch of soil building up inside the tray. What makes it easy is if you buy a new actual seed cell that's all connected, as opposed to each individual one. So just a tip, but if you want to save money, conserve, save your seed cells, that way you can reuse them every single year. So moving on to the next phase. After you got all of your seeds or your cells filled up, you're going to go ahead and water all that in. What we're looking to do is have that soil that you just made, your new seed starting mix, compress and reside down, okay? You don't need to do a lot of watering. You just want to get a good saturation so that that soil, that new seed soil, resides to the bottom of these, okay? You're looking for some, not a lot of compaction, but you want it to settle, in other words. After you do that and you get a good saturation, what you can simply do, and again, if you find any good wood chips, take them out. Go ahead and give it a tap. And here's an example of what you'll find. When you tap that down, that soil down, let's see if I can get you guys some light. This is bad. I'm clearly not a camera guy. Okay, there we go. So as you can see, it was filled to the brim, but as you start tapping it down and that water starts filtering down through the peat moss and the vermiculite, you get a little empty space up there. What you want to do then is go ahead and top off your whole cells again, and you want to fill them up to the brim, or maybe at 1/8 of an inch lower than the actual top of your cell there.